I personally managed and scaled two eight-figure marketing departments, including as the previous CMO for Closers.io and as the previous director of marketing for Springs Rejuvenation, a multi eight-figure a year regenerative medicine company. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you the first of many, which is going to entail the lessons that I learned in doing so. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Sebastian Robeck, and as I just mentioned, I have worked as the CMO for several seven and even eight-figure brands, including as Cole Gordon's CMO, who runs Closers.io. Many of you are familiar with that company. And current day, my team and I help high-ticket info businesses that are stuck at a few $100,000 a month scale to $1 million a month and beyond, and do it consistently, profitably, and while maintaining relatively low stress and cortisol levels. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. So you already know who I am. Let's dive right in. The first lesson that I learned after working inside of these just absolute behemoths of info brands and companies is that most companies, most high-ticket info businesses that I have seen are scaling on what I call a house of cards. And what I'm going to cover specifically in this video is why most 300K a month info businesses are stuck. They have no idea why. Number two, I'm going to cover the exact reporting structure that we use at Closers.io to stay on track daily, weekly, and monthly. I'm also going to cover the real cost of operating off of gut feelings instead of true data and metrics. And lastly, I'm going to cover what eight-figure brands know that most operators just don't. And that's okay because you don't have the proximity and exposure, but I'm also going to show you how to install it into your business. So again, the reality in my experience is that most high-ticket info businesses are just sort of winging their way to a few $100,000 per month. They're throwing ads, funnels, and emails against the wall, hoping something sticks. And sometimes things do stick for a certain period of time, but they've got 18 different tracking sheets, 52 Slack channels, and honestly, it's just chaos. And here's what I've noticed within all that, one of many things. Most often, what is lacking inside of high-ticket info businesses at this scale level is a clear reporting structure. And here's what I mean. Oftentimes, there is no daily reporting. There is no clear weekly trend analysis and weekly reporting structure. And typically, there is little to no clear monthly recaps and projection building going on. Now, sometimes what I've seen is a business might have one or two of these, but they're either not doing them well or they're not doing them enough or consistently enough. Okay. And so here's what happens when you don't have really, really clear reporting. It's really what I call having your house in order. So here's the byproduct of that. You end up making decisions based off of feelings instead of data. And you probably ran into this before as a founder of a high ticket info business where you wake up one day and you're like, I feel like we need a new VSL or I feel like the sales team needs this, or I feel like we should change our call flow from a 2-call close process to a 1-call close because it's better for blah, 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 or whatever it is. And it's really 9 times out of 10, those decisions, those big actions tend to be based off of a general feeling, not real data and what's happening. And as a result, your compass is completely broken. And ultimately, as a business, you end up sailing further and further off course from what your actual goal is. And this is really crucial because it's so easy to get lost in the chaos, the day-to-day chaos and the doing of what's happening inside of the business. And you wake up one day, 6 months have gone by, a year has gone by, and you're still at 300 grand a month, 400 grand a month, and you're not exactly where you want to be. And you're still just in this fuzz of we're kind of moving forward, but not really. And there's a lot happening, but I don't know why we're not growing. And again, it's often because there is no clear reporting, and therefore these decisions are being made off of gut feel. Get a little more tangible and granular, you end up wasting a lot of unnecessary spend, team resources, and mental and physical energy, right? Again, it's like, I feel like our VSL isn't hitting. We need a new one. Or, I feel like we just need better targeting on our ads. Like we just need better media buying, right? Like that's definitely what we need. Or, I feel like we need to really reel back our spend because it's just too much or whatever. And so again, when you do this, your entire business trajectory really can be derailed by simply just not knowing your metrics. I know it sounds incredibly simple and fundamental, but it's really the simple things that scale. And that's one of the biggest things I learned inside these 8-figure companies is that, yes, there are nuances to the complexity for sure, but underneath all the complexity is really the foundations. It's like you look at all the best athletes in the world. Yeah, Kobe Bryant can probably shoot fadeaway better than most people. Maybe Jordan is the only person that can top it, right? But ultimately, his fundamentals are A1. It's what he spent so much time on, right? And so you have a clear reporting structure and, more importantly, a clear reporting cadence in place, you get clarity. And I know that sounds basic. I know it sounds simple, but trust me, when I worked as the CMO for Closers.io, the first thing that I learned probably within a week of being on the team, and I was instantly thrust into managing close to $400,000 or $500,000 a month in spend, two different offers, two totally different divisions, a B2B and a B2C. What I learned very quickly was that 8-figure businesses are where they are at because they know their numbers and they can recite them in their sleep. Okay. And I'm not just talking about things like their cost per call or your cash collected or your ad spend month to date. Of course, you need to know those things. But what I'm going to show you here in a second is something that just goes a lot deeper, and there's a lot more nuance and really gives you this picture that has so much more vividness and clarity to it around what's really, really happening in the business and what needs to happen to get to where you want to go. Not just your basic metrics. Again, any standard media buyer on your team should know these things without a doubt. Oops, not that. And so again, we need to go a lot deeper. So here is how an 8-figure marketing department reports. And this is the exact reporting structure that we build. As soon as we start working with a new client, the very first thing we do is audit the current reporting structure. And I would say probably 8 to 9 times out of 10, we either have to rebuild it and install this from scratch, or we have to refine the current reporting structures to fit into these 3 core pillars. So the first pillar of your 8-figure marketing reporting is your daily reporting. And this is so important, because what I see so often is high ticket info companies really don't have a clear finger on the pulse consistently on what's happening. And when you don't have that daily finger on the pulse, it becomes damn near impossible to course correct and take any actions that can directly influence and positively impact the performance of the marketing and your client acquisition. So this is absolutely vital. The way we like to do it is we have a dedicated tracker, so a spreadsheet. We do probably 90% of everything we do inside of Google Sheets. It's very, very simple, nothing fancy. You have a dedicated tracking sheet and a Slack channel for your daily reporting specifically. Nothing else goes in that Slack channel, just your daily reports. Every single morning, the key metrics get reported in that tracker, including all of your primary and secondary marketing metrics and your sales metrics. And this is crucial because we never just look at marketing in a vacuum or look at sales in a vacuum. The two departments, marketing and sales, are so intimately intertwined. And that's going to be a whole separate video on how to operate those two and create cohesion between those two. I'm going to make another video on that. But man, the importance of looking at both of those, especially, again, this is really what a true CMO and true 8-figure level marketing looks like. You don't just look at what's our lead costs and our call costs and cool, well, things must be great because our cost looks really good on paper. No, you got to go a lot deeper. So you got to look at the sales metrics in order to do so. So of course you want to look at things like ad performance, right? So you want to have a daily tracker that includes things like your ad spend, your click cost, your CTR, your funnel conversion rate, all that. But you also want to have things like your cost per all of your key metrics. So your app cost, call cost, your cost per qualified call, your cost per outbound set. So again, we like to really emphasize looking at, because most of our clients have outbound SDR teams. I would say probably 95 to almost 100% of our clients have those. Because it's just such a core pillar of scaling a high ticket business to $1 million a month. And so we want to look at how many outbound sets are we generating? What's our cost per live call? This is probably a metric that gets so underutilized by so many businesses, because everyone wants to look at, we just got to get our cost per call down, man. We just got to drop the cost per call, cost per book call, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's great. But ultimately the cost per booked call only tells a certain portion of the picture. What you really want to know is, what is it costing us to get somebody on the phone with a sales rep? What's it costing to get a live human being to speak to a sales rep? And then also going even deeper is you want to know your cash per live call, aka how much does it cost to get someone on the phone and how much money enters the bank account every time that happens. So it's also a crucial metric you need to be looking at. You also want to have your sales in there. So sales meaning how many closes, right? So you can call this sales or closes, revenue, and cash. So we have this daily dashboard that tracks all the metrics. And these are what you want to have in there. You also want to have your conversion rates. So you want to have things like your click to app rate. So what percentage of people that click your ad are going and filling out an application. You want to have things like your app to call rate. So what percentage of applications are turning into booked calls? Of course, you need to look at your show rate, your close rate. You want to have app to close and call to close as well. You can also look at lead to close depending on, so that brings me to a small nuance point here. This is also the specific metrics you have in your daily tracker are going to depend on the type of funnel you're running. So if you're running a webinar funnel with an opt-in, you might also want to look at lead to close. I recommend that you do. I wouldn't prioritize it necessarily because opt-ins tend to be a lot lower quality. However, for example, if you're looking at, or if you're running a low ticket funnel, you'll want to look at things like a percentage of low ticket buyer to high ticket ascension, right? So you could call that lead to close rate. You just got to know internally that a quote unquote lead for that funnel is not an actual opt-in, it's a buyer. So you just need to know those things for your specific situation. In addition to having a tracker that includes all these metrics, you also need to ensure that you have a QC process for making sure that you have clean data. So what I mean by that is you want to have either your media buyer or a VA or someone on your team internally who is responsible for gathering and entering this data. And you need to obviously have a process for that. And that's what we do for our clients. We have someone on our team go in, grab this data. And then we also have a process that we run through, and it varies client to client because everyone has a different tech stack, a different tracking and reporting system, different tagging, naming conventions and all that. But you need to have a process by which you cross-check your data with multiple sources. Of course, we always try and have a single source of truth, whether it be Hyros or Go High Level or HubSpot, or whatever the CRM or tracking software is. But you do need a process to cross-check to make sure there aren't big gaping holes. It's very, very normal day to day to have, a few like, let's say, Hyros is saying you had 30 booked calls yesterday, Go High Level saying 28 or 29. So your Slack channel's saying 28 or 29, whatever. So there might be some very minor discrepancies, which is, in my opinion, totally fine, because you can have time zone discrepancies and all that. But you just want to make sure you have a process to ensure that there aren't massive discrepancies where Hyros is saying you had 25 calls yesterday, but then in your Slack channel, you only had 10 come through. And then in Go High Level, you have 16. Well, that's a mess. And you need to make sure that does not happen. And you need to figure out why that's happening. So that's really, really important. It's not just about reporting the data. It's also QCing the data, making sure that it's clean, because ultimately the daily reporting that we're doing really serves as the first foundational layer to all of the other things that we do, including making decisions, which I'm also going to make another video about, which is how to actually utilize this data, which is a totally different process, but you need to have the data in the first place. So once you have your sheet, once you have your process for gathering and cleaning the data, the next step is you need to have a KPI report that gets sent every single morning to that Slack channel, which includes all the key metrics from yesterday. So whether it be your spend, your cost per call, your cost per load to buyer, your high ticket CPA, your cash collected, and let's say your MER or your ROAS. So you want to have all your metrics be reported in that Slack channel, in that KPI report. And typically we'll have somebody, for example, for clients, we'll have somebody from our team go in and manually enter those reports. Sometimes we'll do it automated depending on the funnel. You also want to have that daily report include not just yesterday's numbers, but you also want to have it include the month-to-date totals. And you want to also have that report include the end of month pace. So you have a report that shows, here's what happened yesterday. Here's our total for all these metrics month to date. And here's where we're trending and pacing to be at by the end of the month if we continue the current trajectory. Incredibly, incredibly important, because now you have a snapshot every single morning of where everything's at and what's happening. And this alone, before we even talk about the weekly reporting process and the monthly reporting process, honestly, this daily reporting process alone can give you an instant massive lift in clarity and understanding on what's happening with your marketing and your client acquisition. So again, this is very, very important. Let's move to weekly reporting. So now you got your daily sorted. Next up is weekly. Weekly reporting there's two components to it. So, and again, this is exactly what we did inside of Closers.io, Springs Rejuvenation, and this is the exact reporting structure and systems that we install for all of our clients doing a few $100,000 a month, looking to scale to $1 million a month. So the first component of your weekly reporting process is what we do internally, which is weekly paid media audits. So I cannot tell you how many times over the last few years my team and I have gone inside of a client's ecosystem and their ad accounts, and we ask either them if they're still the founder running their own marketing, or if they have a team, hey, so what's the process by which you guys actually audit your paid media performance every week? And it's like, well, we just look in the ad account, we just check Hyros. That's it. It's like that is kindergarten level, and that's fine because most in-house marketing teams, or even especially founders, just don't get the exposure, the experience at an 8-figure level. Fortunately, we have that, so we understand how to do this on a much deeper level. And so the process for auditing your paid media, again, the purpose of it is really to serve as this sort of tactical marketing checkpoint. So every single week, you've got this process by which you're course correcting and ensuring that you're making decisions with your paid media based off of trends, and you're performing a trend analysis in the first place, which is what this weekly audit does. I cannot emphasize how crucial this is for creating even more clarity. So the daily report creates clarity on the entire picture as a whole. The weekly paid media audits create an even deeper layer of clarity, specifically within the nuances and the weeds of your paid advertising and your campaigns, your creatives, and all that. So who's going to use this weekly paid media audit process? Well, it's going to typically be your CMO, your media buyer, and probably your marketing VA. So I'll give you guys an example. Typically, what we do internally with our firm, where we work with clients really closely, is we'll have a VA from our team internally go and do all of the data aggregation. So going inside the ad accounts, they're pulling all the data, which I'm going to mention here in a second, for all of our campaigns, for the different timeframes, cross-referencing from Hyros, gathering all that. It's quite a lengthy process, but we do this weekly because it provides a level of clarity that you simply cannot get just by looking around the ad account. And it takes time. It's very bandwidth intensive, and that's why it works. And that's why we do it, because it's quite frankly the stuff that most people just aren't willing to do. And that's fine, but we love doing this shit anyway. So we have a VA or a marketing team member internally pull the reports, pull the data into a sheet, and then we typically have our media buyer go in, analyze the trends, read the data, and then start to make some proposed decisions. And then typically myself and our media buying team internally will review the audits every single week together, and I will give my downloads on strategy and creative tests and angle tests and campaign restructurings and architecture changes to the account and all that. So that's usually the flow that it looks that it follows for us internally with our firm and our company. It really depends on what you have internally as far as your in-house team. Sometimes I'll give you an example as well. So when I was the media buyer for Closers.io, before I was the CMO, I started as just the media buyer, managing Facebook and YouTube, about roughly $500 to $600 a month in spend by myself. I essentially did all this by myself. So I entered all the data myself. Fucking took a long time. And I was also reading and analyzing and coming up with the proposed changes. And then I was going and making the changes, actually executing and pushing buttons. So if you have a single media buyer, then they might have to do that. Just depends on what you have at your disposal. So what we do inside of the audit is we perform what I call a full top-down audit of all the ad accounts currently being spent on, right? So that includes obviously Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, any other traffic sources you have. And within that audit of all ad accounts, we include the KPIs for all of the active campaigns that we're running at the moment. And that also includes sales metrics. So again, we track all of the key metrics from our marketing reports that we like to look at, and we track those per campaign. So this is, again, more granular. So in the daily report, you've just got your snapshot of the entire department as a whole, including your spend. You're not splitting out between multiple platforms, right? You can if you'd like, depending on your traffic sources. I would recommend that. But you're not going campaign by campaign and ad sets and all that. This is where we do that. This is where we get a lot more granular in these weekly ads and paid media audits. So we include the marketing metrics. We also include the sales metrics. So we track everything inside of Hyros. So not just marketing metrics. Again, we have to look at both. So we track our sets, we track the closes, the live calls, all that. And we pull those reports typically from Hyros is usually what it tends to be. Sometimes it's the CRM, but more often than not, it's Hyros. And you just using a specific set of taggings and all that. And then we also look at all these key metrics for the most important timeframes. This is really one of the secret sauces of this audit process. So we look at all these metrics, the marketing and the sales metrics, on the 4-day time frame, the 7-day, 14-day, 30-day, and lifetime time frame. The reason why we do this is because we don't just want to see how's a campaign performing in the last couple of days. It's very, very short term, very narrow-minded focus a lot of media buyers fall into, or how's it doing in the last 14 days or whatever. We don't just want to look at it a time frame in an isolated fashion. We want to look at multiple time frames for each campaign and each traffic source so that we can get an understanding of how everything is trending. Because if something is performing, let's say in the last 7 days, it's underperforming, it's out of KPI. And by the way, inside this audit process, we always include a legend or a key inside of the spreadsheet that we use that includes our KPIs. So we know we have a baseline to anchor every single campaign's performance back to. So we know we actually have a way in which we can make decisions on cutting, scaling, launching, etc. And so let's say a campaign is underperforming relative to our benchmark KPIs in the last 7 days, but for the last 14, 30 days and lifetime, it has been well overperforming and it's been doing really, really well in KPI, absolutely demolishing. Well, we might not necessarily turn that campaign off just because it's underperforming in the last 7 days, especially when we take into account things like sales cycle time for a high ticket offer. So again, this provides the clarity that's needed in order to make these kinds of higher level decisions. And really, this process has probably been the most important process for myself and my team to be able to manage really, really hefty ad budgets. For example, for Springs Rejuvenation, the regenerative medicine company, when I was running the marketing for them, we were managing close to $700,000-800,000 a month, but across 3 different offers. So we had 3 completely different divisions inside the business, and very similar for Closers.io and Cole Gordon as well. We got up to spending $600,000-700,000 a month, 2 different offers, actually 3 at one point. And this process really allowed myself and my team to manage that and not lose our minds. It's very easy to just you get all this stuff all over the place and you can really get burned out. Honestly, it can become very overwhelming, but having this process allowed us to not fall into that. Again, when you have this, your team will buy media according to real data and trends, not gut feel. So important. And so here's what you end up deciding. Here are the types of decisions you make. I hit on this a little earlier, but when you leverage this weekly paid media audit, you'll look at and decide things like which campaigns we want to scale, which are dying, what do we want to cut off. It's really an optimization tool, right? You're also going to get clarity on, what creatives are really, really working particularly well, or what creatives are absolutely flopping. Okay, what do we need to kill? What do we need to double down on? What do we need to build more off of? And of course, you're also going to get, clarity on what traffic sources are underperforming. So if Facebook's doing better than YouTube or vice versa, you can kill off the other one. Or more importantly, more nuanced, is you can start to redistribute the spend splits. Let's say you're doing 60-40 Facebook to YouTube. You can go 50-50. And then the next week you might go 60-40 with YouTube if your trends continue with YouTube outperforming Facebook. So it gives you the ability to do that with real clarity. And honestly, I know this sounds a little bit maybe over exaggerating, but you or your marketing team, and I know this is definitely the case for us and our clients, we go to bed literally like resting, sleeping better because we know that the decisions we're making with our paid acquisition and our ads are truly rooted in what's happening, not what we hope will happen, what we think should happen, what we believe is happening. Like no narratives, just truth, data, and trends. And the decisions made off of that are incredibly clear and sharp, and they end up performing a hell of a lot better. That's why we get great results. In addition to the paid media audit, you also will be performing a full creative analysis. So this is what we do for all of our clients. So we look at which ads worked best last week, which ads have been working best the last 14, 30 days and lifetime, which particular hooks, which particular angles. We tend to do a sort of a mastermind internally and a hive mind as to why we believe certain creatives are outperforming others. Is it the hook? Is it the specific language that we're using? To where we kind of go more into a little bit out of data mode and more we shift into pure creative marketing mode, which I love both. My team and I, most of us here on the team love both of those modes. So we're able to oscillate sort of between both of those really well. So then we look at, how can we build on them, right? So you're going to look, okay, how can we take particular ad creative? Let's say you got 2 or 3 ads that are absolutely just way outperforming and outpacing your other 15 to 20 creatives that you're running in the account. And you go, okay, how can we keep the body the same, but we test 10 different hooks? And let's take that one particular hook and let's extrapolate that hook out into 10 hook variations of that hook, keeping the body the same. So then you essentially have this machine where you can create really unlimited creatives. And especially on Facebook, you really got to stay ahead of the curve with making sure you're testing enough new creatives every single week. It's one of the most important parts of scaling your ads on Facebook, particularly. It's not necessarily the same with YouTube. It's different. But this process allows you to do that. Lastly, during this audit, we also analyze any tests that we currently have live. So this could be things like funnel CRO tests. It could be, let's say we're testing a new headline on our landing page or our VSL. Let's say we're testing, split testing a different application length. Let's say we cut our original application inside of our call funnel down from 10 questions to 5 questions, and we're 50-50 split testing the traffic between both funnels. We want to look at which of those is performing better, both from a cost standpoint, quality standpoint, live call conversion standpoint, all that. So we also audit any current tests, not just creative tests or tests inside the ad account, but we also look at funnel-wide and marketing ecosystem-wide tests that we're running and make decisions and adjust accordingly as well. Okay, next up, we're still on the weekly, right? I told you guys, we were going to go deep here, and we are. I don't even know how long this loom is at this point. But next up, and I'll keep the rest of this as short as possible. So you're also going to have a weekly company-wide report, which is going to be a little bit different than what we just did specifically in the weekly paid media. That's a lot more on the marketing side. Of course, looking at sales metrics too. But this weekly company dashboard, this is what we used a lot, especially at Springs Rejuvenation. And I have to give credit where credit is due. I believe it's Ryan Dice who created this company dashboard. And honestly, it's fucking epic. I love it. It really is just, it's so simple. It consolidates everything. And we love using it internally for ourselves and for our clients. So essentially, you have one company dashboard. A lot of you guys are probably already using it. If you're not, I highly recommend you do. And we have all of our crucial metrics for marketing and sales for all the offers and departments that we're currently running inside that dashboard. And so every single week, typically on Mondays with our clients, we will review those metrics. First, of course, we'll review them as a team internally, make sure we're clear on everything, and then we'll review them with the client as well. And primarily what we look at is, are we on or off target for our, were we on or off target last week for our weekly targets, for our monthly targets, and why? And again, this cadence is really what allows you to stay on track. Now, of course, you need to have the ability to make decisions based off of all these numbers and all these trends, which again, will be a separate video. However, you can't even start making decisions if you don't have the clarity on what's happening in the first place, and this is how you get it. And typically, the people that use this company-wide dashboard and these weekly company-wide reports, usually it's a CMO. You might have the media buyer inputting some data in there, potentially getting on a call to add clarity as to what's happening potentially, or sometimes that could just go directly through the CMO. It just depends. And usually you'll also have your CRO, aka whoever's running the sales department. And of course, you'll want to have the founder on there. And sometimes you can have your CFO as well if there's specific finance pieces that need to be covered, ad spend, profitability projections, pacings, all that. So that's typically who's on those meetings and who tends to use the company-wide report the most. So lastly, within this reporting structure, we have monthly reporting. So you're going to there's going to be a little bit of overlap here, but we like to go, really, really deep on these reporting structures when we use these to just ensure that we have ultra clarity on everything. And so we're fine with having some overlap, but you are going to notice there's some overlap specifically between your weekly company-wide report and what we do here with monthly reporting. So the purpose of monthly reporting is really to be able to zoom out and see the whole picture. So again, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, it's so incredibly vital to have the ability to zoom out when it comes to scaling your high ticket info business to, over $1 million a month or beyond that. Because again, it's so easy. It is so incredibly easy to get lost in the weeds. There's so many things happening all the time. And you got to really be able to take a step back and look, okay, what's happening? And really just analyze things from a more aerial view. And that's really the process that we follow for all of our clients, is really this kind of this beautiful flow, this between the two modes where we're constantly doing this and zooming out, going aerial, and then we're going back into the trenches, deploying the troops, deploying the battle plans, and executing and building and rebuilding and optimizing. But you have to have the oscillation between both of those. And so that's what monthly reporting really gives you the ability to do. And ultimately, it allows you to answer the questions of, are we on pace? Are we ahead of pace? Are we off pace for our targets? Of course, you need to have targets if you want to know that. And your monthly reporting dashboard is usually going to be for leadership and like the leadership team, and your head of marketing, head of sales. Again, I don't really give a shit about titles. Call it the CMO, call it head of marketing, whatever, whoever's leading and owning the particular department. Again, typically it's founder, CMO / head of marketing, maybe media buyer as well, and CRO / sales director. Again, you might have your CFO on there as well, but typically this is the structure that I have found to just be the cleanest and the simplest. And here's what this looks like. So you have a central hub dashboard for some of the more granular marketing and sales metrics. So you're gonna have things like, of course, the obvious marketing metrics, the obvious sales metrics, but you'll want to have some of the more granular, even the sales metrics, like the percentage of, for example, like you could have like dial to set rate for the outbound setter team. I know some of these things might seem a little bit in the weeds or too much, but I promise you right now, when you have this level of just ruthless clarity on what's happening, the ability to make decisions, as I said, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but it's so infinitely more effective and sharp than not having the clarity on these things. So again, you have the central hub dashboard where you house all your marketing and sales metrics. So you can see how everything is sort of affecting each other. And then typically the way we like to do it, this is a really, really good flow that we have found to work, is we'll have our central hub, which is the monthly dashboard for reporting purposes. We'll have that pulled directly from the daily tracker we built earlier to auto-populate. So we'll just set up some very simple import spreadsheet functions to auto-populate our totals month to date for all the key marketing and sales metrics, our end of month pacings. So it's like, okay, we're halfway through the month. Here's how many calls we've had booked on the calendar. Here's how many live calls we've had so far, just as an example. If we continue this current pace, we will end the month at this. And then you ultimately get to see your projection bias. So are you on pace? Are you off pace for all the targets that you need to hit? By the way, as a slight side note, but very, very important here, if you are wondering, how the hell do I even set targets? How do I build projections? How do I model growth? And how do I get clarity on what needs to happen inside the business to hit our targets? Inside the description of this video, you will see a link to grab what I call the $1 million a month KPI dashboard. It's completely free. It's a dashboard that I have built and consolidated for you as a founder, and you can also translate it and give it to your marketing team. And it's, again, designed to give you complete clarity on what's currently happening in the business when it comes to marketing and client acquisition and even some sales stuff. And also there's a growth modeling tool inside of that dashboard that will allow you to reverse engineer your numbers and get clear on what specifically needs to happen in order to hit your revenue targets. There's also a walkthrough Loom video to go along with it, so you'll know exactly how to use it. Again, if you want to grab that, it's completely free. It's in the link in the description. I highly recommend you do, because that will be really your first step towards getting this sort of this level of 8-figure clarity that I'm talking about here. But anyways, let's continue. So again, you're going to have your projection bias. The kinds of decisions you're going to use it for, this monthly dashboard specifically, are adjusting your budgets. So that's huge, right? Okay, are we do we need to continue to spend this much? Can we dial spend back? Do we need to increase spend? Can we just stay where we are? So that's really, really crucial to be able to course correct throughout the month. Of course, things like hiring decisions. So there might be some gaps and some holes that the monthly report will shine light on that makes you go, shit, okay, we need this person, or we need to fill this hole, whatever it is. It will also give you the clarity to potentially look at rebuilding some funnels or funnel optimization, right? So CRO, split testing some pages. So let's say, for example, your percentage of people that hit your booking page and actually book is very low relative to what we know to be, an industry standard and what should be working. Well, that gives us the clarity to go, okay, well, a worthwhile split test could potentially be reworking the language and potentially even the structure or the design, depending on what's happening, of the booking page. Typically, it's usually making it simpler and more clear on what someone needs to do and why they're doing it. That's usually what the case is. Sometimes it's different, but that gives us the ability to make those decisions and then therefore directly impact the performance of our entire marketing, our funnel, our ecosystem. And that all trickles down to the bottom of the P&L with CPA, net profit margin, return on spend, all that. So these things have a huge impact. It also gives us the ability to flag any potential operations issues that might be hiding or being disguised as marketing issues. Again, I know I've been emphasizing the word clarity. I just don't know how else to emphasize it even more. And then here's a little screenshot that you can sort of reference for this reporting cadence. By the way, you will have access to this Notion doc in the description of this YouTube video as well. And that brings us to the end. This was a long one, I know. I really genuinely hope that this was helpful for you as a founder. When you start implementing these processes, you're going to do what I call getting your house in order. Building a new VSL, building a new funnel, scaling your ad spend, testing this, trying that, all this new fancy stuff you could potentially do at any point with your marketing is all great. We love testing. We love building shit, right? That's what we do. But none of it's going to matter, and none of it's going to perform nearly as well as it could be if you don't have these key, just bedrock foundation layers installed inside the marketing department. And this is what we install for our clients. Typically, it's one of the very, very first things that we do when we start working with a client and hands-on scaling them to $1 million a month. And again, if you start implementing this, give this video to your team, have them start working on this. I promise you it's going to make a huge difference. In the next lesson, in the next video here on the channel, in this series, I'm going to share how we actually use this data to drive decisions, real examples, real scenarios where this data directly impacts how we show up and what we do on the marketing, and the bridge between just the understanding and then the actual implementation and the action steps. Again, if you are a high ticket info founder, if you're doing a couple $100,000 a month, you keep hitting this wall, you keep trying to scale to 500, 600, or even $1 million a month, but you don't know why you can't get there. Again, I highly recommend going in the description, picking up the free $1 million a month KPI dashboard that I built. Again, there is a tool inside that dashboard that will allow you to model the growth necessary, so you can plug in your metrics manually, or your team can, and you can find, including your revenue target, and you can find out exactly what needs to happen inside the business to get to the revenue target that you have. And if you want to get straight to knowing what it looks like to work with us, you can also book a call in the description as well. But I highly implore you, pick up the dashboard. That alone will give you so much clarity. And I promise you will have a newfound level of vision on your business. So with that said, I will see you in the next video. I hope you found this helpful, and I can't wait to see you soon.